Welcome to T, the Transgender Experience in Arkansas, a series of conversations with an array of transgender guests. T is filmed in the Listening Lab in the studios of KUAF National Public Radio in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm your host, Taylor Johnson. Today, our guest is Malachi Clement. His pronouns are he, him. O'Shea was born in the Bentonville, Bella Vista area and is 27 years old. Malachi, welcome. It's awesome to see you and have you here today.
I'm glad to finally be here.
Absolutely. Malachi, how old were you when you began to realize that you were trans? What did that initial feeling, what did that feel like for you?
I think it started at a pretty early age, probably back when I was like 5. I probably didn't have a name for it or a word. I didn't know anything like that even existed, really. And so I kind of just felt like I didn't fit in that box that I was told to be put in at a very young age. And as I grew up, I kind of forgot about that box and I tried to conform myself to society. And then one day I kind of woke up and I was like, wait, hold on. And I don't know. I just did some research and I had a name for what I was feeling and then kind of went on from there. But I would say initially it started probably around when I was 5, when I didn't know anything.
What did you initially do to start affirming your gender, either socially or just like the way you dress?
Um, I think while I was growing up, it was a lot about the way that I dressed. I didn't like to wear dresses a whole lot. I didn't like wearing skirts. I definitely didn't like wearing skirts. Um, didn't really like wearing jeans. I wore a lot of basketball shorts, just random shirts. My mom would take me to go to Kohl's and she'd be like, all right, let's look at these things. And I'm like, but look at this thing over here that comes with a dinosaur toy, Mom. Like, look at that. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Um, so I think it started with the clothes and then um, that never really changed while I grew up. So
When did you officially come out as a trans guy?
I think I came out when I was 20, 20 or 21, pretty late. I remember there was a time when I was 18 that I kind of woke up one morning and I looked at my partner at the time and I was like, I think I want to try more masculine pronouns. And she kind of agreed for a minute. And I think it lasted for a day. And I kind of forgot about it. And so it kind of went into like this sleep state where I forgot that was even existing in my life. And then going into the community more, going into the gay community more, um, I realized that I've been neglecting myself throughout these years, and that's when I really started focusing on it. So I think when I was like 20, I was like, I don't care about what anybody thinks about me anymore. This is what I'm gonna do, and we're gonna figure out what this is about.
Did your friends and family have a similar response, or was their response to you a little bit different than your partner at the time?
Um, I think back when I was 18, like you were saying about my partner, my family didn't really know about it. My friends really didn't know about it. Back then, I didn't have my own friends. I had maybe one person in my life, and but the rest of my friends were her friends, and some of them were pretty like, okay, that's cool, but it also didn't stick with them. And my family, um, they didn't know anything about it when I was that age. But when I finally started coming out, my sister told me about a story one time when I was like maybe 7 or 8. She was like, when I came out, she was like, you know what? I knew it. I knew it this whole time. Like I saw it, and she has been my most like major like support since then. So
Are you comfortable describing, I'm going to rephrase that. Are you comfortable sharing your sexual orientation with us?
most definitely, I'm very open about my sexual orientation, especially because the sexual orientation does not identify with my gender identity. It's two separate things here. I would identify as my sexuality being pansexual. Um, I don't really care like how they identify or how they look half the time. It's more so just like who they are as a person. If they're a good person, if we vibe well, that's great. Um, yeah.
Are you receiving any kind of gender affirming medical treatment?
Just this past year, I believe, I actually had my top surgery. Um, that was a major experience for me, especially because the whole community actually came and helped me with it. I did a lot of shows. I raised a lot of money on GoFundMe, saved up my own money, and through, I think, 7 months, I made payments on my surgery until it was time. So, have that going for me. Any other surgery, I don't. It's hard to say. You know, medical the medical field right now for that kind of stuff is not where it needs to be right now for it to be safe or to guarantee that the things that we experience before the surgery is still going to be there after surgery.
Do you want to elaborate on any of that?
Um, Not really. No,
Fair enough.
it
Hey,
kind of
fair
gets
enough.
a little it kind of gets a little too personal.
Fair enough. What do you do for a living?
Depends on the month. It really does. Uh, I just left working for Amazon, working $19 an hour for driving, and it took a lot of my life away. It really did. I couldn't do the things that I like to do, like perform or just be at home with my current girlfriend. Um, and now I'm back with Bath and Body Works that I've worked with for like 5 years. And just coming back into it, I'm like, wow, I'm actually comfortable and I don't mind being here. So it's pretty great. But on the side, I have my own business. I do pet services. So if anybody ever needs somebody to come in and watch their dog for a second or take them out or whatever, I got you. I can do that.
Can you share with us the name of your company? Like how people can reach out to you and,
Yeah.
and employ you, I
Yeah.
suppose?
Yeah. So the company name is Bark and Roll. So bark in roll. We do that because it's mostly just we go to your house. You don't come to us. We go to you. And so the reason why I named it that way was because my dog Corvo. I tell her she's the prettiest girl at the party. And so we bring the party to the pub.
You also have another vocation as a trans drag king. You mentioned performing earlier. Describe that kind of persona to us.
Like O'Shea's persona. Um, he's interesting. He's very interesting. At first, when we were both younger, he wasn't very condescending. He's always been humble, um, but he definitely was a drama queen to himself. He was very like snippy, and he wasn't nice before a show. On stage, he was great. Nowadays, as we like grew and we realized like it's not as a big deal as we try to make it out to be. Um, he just he's just lovable. All the queens love to see him. They remember him more than he remembers them half the time, and that's due to social anxiety. But I don't know. He's just a lovable character that just brings out a whole lot of energy and pulls you into a story that he wants you to feel in that moment.
What was your very first performance like?
It was very nerve wracking. Okay. It was at C4 Nightclub and Lounge. We had an open stage night that night. I was 21 when I first started. Okay. Um, in high school, I never did theater. The only thing I did was like marching band. So like doing something like this was way out of my comfort zone. I didn't know if I was going to be good at it. Um, and I remember I went out and I think I did Mumbo number 5. I think that's what it was. And I remember I was in greens and purples and golds, and I did that, and people loved it, and people just blew me up after that. Um, but I remember being really, really nervous, and after that, it's just been a roller coaster.
It's great that you got such a warm reception considering that you are the first drag king in this area. What does that feel like?
Um, it's it sometimes it feels like it's a lot of pressure, um, just because like I know I'm an example for people who want to perform, especially because I'm kind of considered as the only one. Um, as a drag king performer, we have like bio kings too, but in my category, I'm in Northwest Arkansas, kind of the only one. And then if anybody wants to come in, like I've set a standard of how these kings should act. And when they come in, I expect them to get to know me and I expect to get to know them, and I want them to hold themselves to that same expectation as I hold myself. And it's to be humble and kind and accept help when you need it. Um, but when I was like 18, it was a lot. It was so much, and I try not to let it get to my head. So
Do you think these up and coming drag kings are meeting your expectations?
sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes, it seems like the new kids, and I'm gonna be real. It seems like the new kids that are coming into the scene, they have been getting more of a big head. They haven't felt what it's like to struggle a little bit when it comes to being accepted. Because we're so accepting nowadays, like you want to come in, you want to do this, great. We're gonna love what you do no matter what or however you act. Um, but like for people like me and a bunch of other the older queens, we had to fight for our spot. We had to fight for what we have now. And I'm not saying they're not fighting. And I'm not saying that they're not being handed something. It's just a little bit easier because we are all a lot more accepting. Um, there's people like Formaldehyde from Fort Smith. He's great. Like I love him. He's really sweet. He's got so much potential, but he's got a long way to go. But I think he reaches my expectations for how we should be acting in this community for drag kings.
You mentioned performing at C4. It's the local gay club slash bar. Is there any other place that you perform, or can we see you online?
Find a couple of videos on my Facebook, my personal Facebook, with O'Shea Reed online. It's far few in between, just because it's hard to find somebody to take videos, and I move around too fast, so I kind of just look like a blur, if we're gonna be honest. Um, but every now and then you can catch me um, at Kincaid's in Fort Smith. Sometimes I'm down in Oklahoma, Little Rock. Here recently, I'm going to be at JJ's Live December 9th. Uh, Tickets, I believe, are on sale right now, and you can go to jjlive.com and something else. And you can get tickets off there. I think it's like 25. You get a meal, you get to see the show. It's a great time. I think it's supposed to be kind of Christmas themed, so we'll see how that goes. But got that going, and yeah, I think that's about it. Mostly in this like little area, my little bubble. We're hoping that in the future we can go to a completely different state, but we'll see.
Why do you perform?
Because it gives me an outlet, actually. I never realized how much I actually needed it until I started doing it. Um, and I realized when I stopped doing it for a little bit that I was so just in my head and stressed, and I had no outlet to get away with, like, to get rid of all these feelings that I was having. And through certain music that I could feel like I had a connection to and that was popular, I could get my feelings out and all these stressors. Or if I just had a really bad day, I know I can go pick a song that I really really like, go perform like to my heart's content, and then come back and be exhausted and feel relief.
Have you been forced to deal with any transphobia when you perform or just in general out in public?
Not as often. Now that I look the way that I do, that like I'm 3 years on my testosterone, I'm probably barely clockable unless you're another trans person and you kind of know what to look for if you're looking. Um, but I mean, back when I was in like my early on transitioning stages, there was a lot of it, a lot of things that people didn't understand. Um, and when it comes to the drag community, a lot of people are really accepting of that kind of stuff. Mostly because like if you're your persona, they're going to use your persona's pronouns. So if you're a drag queen, you get she her pronouns, but if you're not in your drag, you get your he him or whatever pronouns you prefer. And they're normally, you know, they're pretty accepting of all of that. Recently, whenever I went to uh, Entertainer of the Year, when I went to that national pageant in whenever that was, August, I think, they actually opened Entertainer of the Year to trans people. And so me and two other guys, we were kind of the first ones to be in the system. And they were trying to be inclusive, and I love that for them. However, there was a lot of misusing pronouns. And you had three people that didn't look like we were all in different stages. We all had the same type of surgery, but we all had three different stages. I passed, another person passed, and one person didn't because they had to stop testosterone because they had a baby. And that's hard for that person. And I feel for that, you know? But like, it's like, you have trans people in this, but yet you're choosing to hushily use the wrong pronouns towards these people, while my competitors had no problem. It was just my producers. And I'm not trying to say it to backlash this pageant. Love this pageant to death. I just feel like they could have done a little bit better in that moment. Um, but I think it's just like those little sprinkles nowadays, here's and there's, and starting a new job and them not understanding why I don't go by the name that I want to go by, and not the name that I was given, you know. Um, and sometimes it gets easy and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it bothers me. Sometimes it's like I don't care. It just depends.
Why do you think trans individuals, specifically trans youth, receive such hate and backlash for living their lives?
I think it's just because people, like the older generations, are worried about these younger people already making up their mind about something like this at a very early age. And I don't really blame them. That's a lot to think about. Gender is a lot to think about when you're young. But if you know, you know. And you shouldn't hide yourself from it. Not saying that. You shouldn't hide yourself from that kind of stuff. However, when you're that young, it is hard to figure out if getting on hormones is something that you actually want to do. Getting surgery is something you actually want to do. Like, that's a lot to think about. And I feel like that might be the reason why a lot of people hate on the younger trans youth, because it they may think, well, they don't know, they're too young. They shouldn't be able to make that kind of decision for themselves. They have every right to. I feel like trans youth needs to be guided, and that's why we have programs now to help people guide them in the direction that they should be going. Um, but I really think it just numbs down to they're too young, and they just don't want them to do something that they're going to regret later.
Do you think that there's value in introducing the youth to drag and drag culture, or just trans, older trans individuals?
Hmm. I think it's important for people to know. Like, if I had known back when I was like 7, I think like I probably would have gotten to the conclusion a lot faster. Sometimes I wish I was 18 and I started my transition. Um, I didn't have that privilege. I'm glad for the people who do have that. And letting people be aware that sometimes we're just not born in the right body is okay, and you got to start that acceptance really young. just to let them be aware of it. It doesn't mean that they are, or we're suggesting that, you should really think about your gender and make sure you're actually in the right body, but just to be aware of it. And drag culture, it definitely needs to be a little bit more accepted for these kids, um, because like kids love seeing drag queens. They look like superheroes to them. They're like, oh my god, she's so pretty. Like, I got a niece and a nephew, and my niece just absolutely loves drag queens. Like, she was loving every little bit when I took her to a show once when I was performing. And she loved what I was doing too, but like, I'm not as big and glamorous as these queens over here with their big, Dolly Parton wigs going around. Um, but uh, I do think it's important for kids to know about drag entertainers and to be exposed to it, because drag queens, they and entertainers in general, they know what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Like, as soon as we figure out there's going to be a kid in the audience, especially a queen, because they're the first ones to hear it, um, they're like, we got to change something real quick. I can't be wearing that anymore. We're going to change the number entirely. It's a good thing I have this fourth one that is a little bit more PG. And I think people give entertainers the benefit of the doubt that we don't know our audience. But in fact, we know a lot about our audience.
Earlier, you mentioned you do a lot of work locally, a lot of volunteering, charity, fundraising. Tell us about that.
Okay. I want to get into more, because that's with my drag. That's what I like doing the most, is being able to raise money for other people. I think back in, I think it was like 2018, 19, I think. I was with the Bentonville Follies, and we were raising money for the suicide hotline. I think we raised over $100,000 for the suicide hotline, and it was down in Bentonville at the old movie theater that's now a guitar store, and that place was huge, and we just filled it with people, and you could just go up and down, and people were just throwing your money, and like we're just getting all of it, and it's a very rewarding feeling to know like you're actually doing something, you know, you're helping somebody with with doing what you love.
Are there any specific organizations or people, like locally, that have helped you on your way or just have been kind of standout that you would want to mention?
When I first started out, like when I was just going to drag shows, Taylor Madison Monroe was like a person that I looked up to a lot. And when I started my drag career, I actually ended up becoming her son in the drag family. And so that person has always been there for me, if I ever needed something, especially during EOY when she basically was like my mentor for it. She got me anything that I needed, within reason, and really helped me put on a really good package for Mr. EOY, Mr. Entertainer of the Year. And very thankful for her when it comes down to that. Patty, Lady Cakes Monroe, she is amazing. Patty is also a part of the Bentonville Follies. I think she was the one that brought me into the Bentonville Follies, and she does so much for the community. She takes time out of her own day to make sure everybody is taken care of. She does the Friendsgiving every year. She makes all those. She like gets help making all those turkeys and the squashes and all this kind of stuff. And she's been a big help. And I remember just going to her house on a Wednesday at 9, and we're sitting there stoning something that I need in like a week, or sitting there and I'm making her mixes and she's helping me with mine, and we're bouncing ideas off of each other. And she's always been there for me, throughout my career, through drag and just in my personal life. If I ever needed somebody to talk to, Patty would sit there and listen. And would either tell me what I wanted to hear or not tell me what I want to hear, depending on what we're talking about. Uh, and then Evan Duvall, he's become like a brother to me. I love him to death. He is one of the bio kings in this area. He was actually around before I came in, and he became very jealous of me because I was younger and I was getting a lot of attention and I was new. And I never resented him for it. I understood. And throughout the years, I was like, Evan, you got nothing to worry about. They all still love you. And he'd be like, no, they don't. They don't love me. They love O'Shea now. And I'm like, Evan, stop. And so throughout the years, now he's at a point where he's like, I know I'm it. Like, I know they still love me. And I'm like, yeah, Evan, they do. And now I'm in the point where I'm like, now I'm old and all these guys are coming in and I'm trying to get myself out ahead of like people aren't forgetting about me. Um, so it's been really fun throughout the years with him, kind of going back and forth, and he's just a really fun guy. Um, yeah, I think that's it. And I'm really just family, friends, everybody, just my whole community, everybody. They've been great.
What do you want listeners to understand about being trans in Arkansas?
It's definitely not easy. Nor is it simple. We got to go through a lot of hoops. Talking to like the younger people out there, you're going to go through a lot of hoops. Insurance is going to be crazy. We don't have things like if you want to start testosterone, we don't have things like Planned Parenthood anymore within this region. I think we still have it in Little Rock. And so that was the easiest way to get on testosterone. You could go in there and be like, hey, I feel this way. And they're like, cool. And then they get you started. And you have to convince a lot of people that you feel this way or this is real or it's not a phase. And you're going to go through a lot of hardships, but once you get through it and you start your journey and you get to where you want to be in your transition, you're going to be happy. You just got to go through it. We all did it. You got your brothers and sisters behind you. Like, they'll help you through it. And it's not easy, but I think this area is starting to accept it a little bit more. Little by little. We're getting there. Baby steps.
One final question for you. Do you have any advice for trans youth?
Don't wear a binder that has little clips on the side. Please don't do that to yourself. Those are not good. I don't care how small your chest is. Don't do it. It's not good for you. And apparently G2B is not good for you now either. So I don't know what's good. I had surgery. That's not my problem anymore. But, I mean, if apparently it's not good anymore, I'll go ahead and suggest G2B. That's because that's what I used, and I had no problems with it. But, yeah, stay away from the clips on the sides, kids. Those are not good for you. Take breaks, because I knew a lot of people that didn't take breaks from their binders. And just give yourself time, especially when you start hormones. Like, I understand you're waiting for the beard to come in and stuff like that. And I think that's one thing that I wish I hadn't done is moxicillin's great. It works wonders to help you grow the facial hair that you want. But it also recedes your hairline real fast, too. And that's what I learned. So, and in my genetics, we don't have the greatest hairline. So just know your hairline's going to recede. Your facial hair is going to come in, and you're going to be okay. Just stay away from weird binders, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise on who you are and who you're meant to be.
Malachi, you're absolutely a delight. Thank you so much for coming today and talking with us. You're wonderful, and I hope to have you back again someday.
I would love to be back. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. The Transgender Experience in Arkansas is a project of KUAF Public Radio. I'm Taylor Johnson. T is directed and filmed in the Listening Lab by Emerson Alexander, he, him, with audio editing by Sophie Narani, she, they. T is produced by reporter and accordionist Jacqueline Froelich, she, her, and conceived by reporter Daniel Caruth, he, him. Financial support for T is provided by generous KUAF listeners. Thank you for supporting your public radio station. You can stream our series at listeninglabkuaf.com.